Welcome to our deep dive. It's going to be into a concept from philosophy,
Yeah.
and it might sound a bit intimidating at first, I think,
Yeah.
but
A little scary.
the Apollonian and Dionysian.
Yeah.
But trust me, this is an idea from Friedrich Nietzsche's work, The Birth of
All
Tragedy,
right.
and it's surprisingly relevant to all of us.
Yeah. It's amazing how these philosophical ideas, often rooted in ancient thought, can still offer profound insights into the way we live and create and just experience the world today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Nietzsche was fascinated by ancient Greek mythology.
Right.
And he used two Greek gods, Apollo and Dionysus,
Mm-hmm.
to represent these two fundamental forces that are constantly at play within us and in the world around us.
And these aren't just like abstract symbols. Think of Apollo, god of the sunlight, reason, and harmony.
Right.
He represents that part of us that craves order, structure, clarity. Like if you enjoy organizing your bookshelf by color
Oh, yeah.
or meticulously planning your day,
Oh, yeah?
that's your inner Apollo at work.
I definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
I love a good to-do list.
Yeah.
But then there's Dionysus,
Yes.
god of wine, ecstasy, and unrestrained revelry.
That's right.
He embodies the wild, instinctual energy that drives us to seek out passion, lose ourselves in the moment, and connect with something larger than ourselves.
Yes.
Think about the feeling of dancing till dawn or being swept away by a powerful piece of music.
Uh-huh.
That's the Dionysian energy coursing through you.
Exactly. And here's where Nietzsche's insight gets really interesting.
Okay.
He didn't see these forces as good versus evil or right versus wrong.
Right.
He believed that both are essential for a truly fulfilling life.
So it's not about choosing one over the other, but rather recognizing that they exist in this constant dance within us.
Precisely. Too much Apollo in life can become rigid, predictable, and lacking in spontaneity.
Uh-huh.
But too much Dionysus, and we risk chaos, burnout, and just losing sight of our goals.
Right. It's like that saying, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, But on a deeper level, we need both structure and release, both discipline and abandon.
Absolutely. And Nietzsche saw this dynamic playing out most vividly in art.
Okay.
He believed that art was the perfect arena for these two forces to clash and ultimately create something truly powerful.
So let's talk about art.
Yeah.
Can you give us some concrete examples of how these Apollonian and Dionysian energies manifest in different art forms?
Think about a classical sculpture, perfectly proportioned, smooth marble,
Yeah.
representing the ideal human form.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Apollonian aesthetic, balance, harmony, and striving for perfection.
Yeah.
But then consider a piece of music like a symphony that builds to a crescendo,
Right.
overflowing with raw emotion, making you want to dance or weep.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Dionysian energy, uncontainable, passionate, visceral.
So it's like the difference between a perfectly composed photograph and a free-flowing abstract painting.
That's a great analogy. And Nietzsche was particularly fascinated by ancient Greek tragedy,
Okay.
which he saw as this masterful blend of both forces. These plays dealt with heavy, often chaotic themes, fate, death, betrayal.
Right.
But they presented these themes in this structured, poetic way.
So the content was very Dionysian, full of intense emotions.
Yeah.
But the structure of the play was very Apollonian.
Exactly. And Nietzsche loved that Greek tragedy allowed the audience to experience these intense emotions in this safe, cathartic way.
This is making me think about my own taste in art.
Yeah.
I'm drawn to both highly structured minimalist art and more chaotic abstract pieces. Maybe that reflects my own inner balance.
Yeah.
Or lack thereof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great insight. And it highlights the fact that this Apollonian Dionysian dynamic isn't just an abstract concept.
Yeah.
It's something that lives within each of us and influences the way we experience and interact with the world around us.
So how does this play out beyond the realm of art?
Oh.
How do we see this balance or imbalance manifesting in our everyday lives?
Well, that's a question we'll dive into next. Because these forces are at work everywhere in our relationships, our work, even the way we approach personal growth and self-discovery.
It's fascinating to think about how these Apollonian and Dionysian energies shape not just our individual preferences, but also like our culture as a whole.
Right.
I mean, we're just talking about how Nietzsche saw this dynamic playing out in art.
Yes.
But I'm curious to hear more about his critique of modern society. Like, what did he see as the dominant force in his time?
Well, Nietzsche was writing in the late 19th century,
Okay.
a time of rapid industrialization, scientific advancements, and a growing belief in the power of human reason to solve all of society's problems.
Mm-hmm.
Is the peak of what we call the Enlightenment era.
So it sounds like the pendulum was swinging pretty hard in the Apollonian direction.
Yeah.
Was he concerned that we were becoming too focused on logic and reason at the expense of our more like instinctual, passionate sides?
Exactly. Nietzsche saw this intense focus on reason and order as a double-edged sword. While it led to incredible progress in many areas, he also felt it was causing a kind of spiritual and emotional disconnect.
Like we were becoming too rigid, too controlled, and losing touch with the raw, vital energy that makes us feel truly alive.
Precisely. He saw this happening in the rise of rigid social structures, the increasing mechanization of life, and even in the way art was becoming more about technical skill than genuine emotional expression.
Yeah.
It's like we were building a world that was very impressive on the surface, but lacked a certain depth of feeling.
It makes me think about those times when I get so caught up in my to-do list and achieving goals that I forget to just be present and enjoy the moment.
Right.
Like my inner Apollo takes over, and I need to consciously remind myself to tap into that Dionysian energy.
That's a perfect example, and Nietzsche believed that this overemphasis on the Apollonian was leading to a kind of spiritual and emotional emptiness in modern society.
So what was his solution? Do you think we should just abandon reason and logic altogether and embrace pure chaos?
Not at all. Remember, Nietzsche wasn't about extremes. He wasn't advocating for one side over the other.
Right.
His point was that we need both. We need the Apollonian to structure our lives to create meaning and beauty.
Right.
But we also need the Dionysian to fuel our passions, to connect us to the deeper currents of existence, to remind us that life is not just about logic and control, but also about feeling instinct and surrendering to the unknown.
So it's about finding that dynamic equilibrium, that sweet spot where both forces can coexist and even enhance each other.
Exactly. And for Nietzsche, one of the most powerful ways to access and reawaken that Dionysian energy was through music.
Oh, interesting. So it wasn't just about appreciating music for its aesthetic qualities. He saw it as having a deeper, almost spiritual significance.
Absolutely. He believed that music had this unique ability to bypass our rational filters and tap directly into our primal emotions. Think about how a particular song can evoke a rush of memories or transport you back to a specific time and place. It's like music has this direct line to our subconscious.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Music can be so incredibly powerful in the way it makes us feel things that we can't always articulate or explain.
And Nietzsche saw this as a key to unlocking those suppressed Dionysian energies. For him, music wasn't just entertainment. It was a way to reconnect with the raw, instinctual forces of life itself, to experience a kind of ecstatic unity that transcended the limitations of our everyday, overly rationalized existence.
It's funny because when I think about some of the most memorable experiences in my life,
Yeah.
they often involve music, like dancing at a concert with friends, feeling the energy of a crowd singing along.
Yeah.
Even just listening to a song that perfectly captures a particular mood or emotion.
That's the power of music. It allows us to tap into something larger than ourselves, to experience a sense of connection and belonging that transcends the boundaries of language and logic.
Yeah.
And for Nietzsche, this was essential for counterbalancing the overemphasis on reason and order that he saw as so prevalent in modern society.
So he wasn't saying we should all quit our jobs and become musicians, but he was suggesting that we find ways to incorporate more music and maybe more broadly, more experiences that awaken our senses and emotions into our lives.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance, and it doesn't have to be just through music.
Right.
It could be through dance, through art, through spending time in nature, through any activity that allows us to connect with that primal instinctual energy that Nietzsche believed was so vital for human flourishing.
This is making me think about how I often feel most alive and energized when I'm traveling, exploring new places, trying new foods, encountering different cultures. It's like stepping outside of my usual routine and embracing a bit of chaos and uncertainty allows me to tap into a different side of myself.
That's a wonderful example, and it highlights how even embracing discomfort and the unknown can be a way to awaken those Dionysian energies.
Yeah.
It's not always about seeking pleasure and comfort. Sometimes it's about pushing ourselves beyond our usual limits and experiencing the full spectrum of human emotions.
This conversation is really making me reconsider how I view my own life, my priorities, my habits, the experiences I seek out. It's like you're giving me a whole new lens through which to see the world.
I'm glad to hear that. And that's the beauty of Nietzsche's work.
Yeah.
It's not about giving us a set of rules or a prescribed way of living.
Right.
It's about challenging us to question our assumptions, to explore different perspectives, and to ultimately create a life that is more authentic, more fulfilling, and more aligned with our own unique needs, and desires.
I'm so intrigued to hear more about how we can actually put this into practice. How do we cultivate that balance in our own lives? What are some concrete steps we can take to embrace both our Apollonian and Dionysian sides?
Well, those are the questions we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
It's all about finding that sweet spot, that dynamic equilibrium that allows us to live more fully and creatively.
So we've explored these two powerful forces,
Yeah.
the Apollonian drive for order and structure,
Right.
and the Dionysian urge for chaos and passion. We've talked about how they show up in art, in culture, even in our own personal experiences. But now I'm really curious, to get practical,
Right.
how do we actually cultivate that balance in our daily lives?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And, as you might expect, Nietzsche doesn't offer any easy answers or step-by-step instructions, but he does give us some powerful insights into how we can approach this challenge.
So no magic formula, but maybe some guiding principles we can apply.
Exactly. And one of the most important is the idea of self-knowledge.
Okay.
Nietzsche believed that the first step toward achieving any kind of balance is to understand our own tendencies.
Okay.
Are we naturally more drawn to structure and routine, or do we thrive on spontaneity and improvisation?
So it starts with a bit of introspection, what are our natural inclinations? Where do we tend to lean in this Apollonian-Dionysian spectrum?
Precisely. And it's not about judging ourselves for those inclinations.
Right.
It's simply about recognizing them as part of who we are. Once we understand our own tendencies, we can start to make conscious choices about how to bring in more of the other side.
So for someone who's very Apollonian, very driven, and goal-oriented, the challenge might be to create space for more playfulness, more spontaneity, those moments of pure joy and uninhibited expression.
Exactly. It's about loosening the reins a bit, allowing yourself to step outside of that carefully constructed comfort zone.
Yeah.
Maybe it's taking a dance class, going to a concert, or just spending time in nature without any agenda or goal in mind.
I love those examples. It's like giving yourself permission to just to experience the world through your senses rather than trying to control or analyze everything.
That's a great way to put it. And for someone who's more naturally Dionysian, maybe the challenge is to cultivate a bit more structure and discipline.
So not suppressing that passionate energy, but finding ways to channel it constructively.
Exactly. Maybe it's setting aside dedicated time for creative pursuits, developing a regular meditation practice, or learning a new skill that requires focus and concentration. It's not about becoming someone you're not, but rather about finding ways to harness that energy and direct it in a way that supports your overall well-being and growth.
This makes me think about how I used to resist routines and schedules. I saw them as stifling my creativity. But over time, I've realized that having some structure actually frees up more mental space for creative exploration.
Right.
It's like having a solid foundation allows me to build something more interesting and complex.
That's a wonderful insight, and it highlights how embracing aspects of both the Apollonian and Dionysian can lead to this more integrated and ultimately more fulfilling experience.
It reminds me of that concept of yin and yang in Eastern philosophy, the idea that seemingly opposing forces are actually complementary and necessary for wholeness.
That's a great connection. It shows how this concept of balance resonates across cultures and throughout history. Whether it's yin and yang, the golden mean, or the Apollonian and Dionysian, there's this recognition that a fulfilling life requires embracing seemingly opposing forces.
It's like those forces hold each other in check. Too much of one, and things can get out of whack.
Yeah.
But when they're imbalanced, they create this dynamic tension that propels us forward.
Precisely. And Nietzsche believed that this process of finding balance was an ongoing journey, this constant striving for what he called self-overcoming.
So it's not about achieving some perfect state of equilibrium and then staying there forever.
Right.
It's about continuously adapting and evolving as we encounter new challenges and experiences.
Exactly. It's about pushing ourselves beyond our limitations, embracing challenges, and constantly striving to become more than we were yesterday. And that involves recognizing that both the Apollonian and Dionysian have something valuable to offer us on that journey.
This has been such an insightful exploration. Nietzsche's ideas are challenging, provocative, and ultimately deeply enriching. It's like he's giving us this new framework for understanding not just ourselves, but the world around us.
I completely agree. And I hope our listeners have found this deep dive thought-provoking as well.
Yeah.
Remember, it's not about finding a one-size-fits-all solution,
Right.
but rather about an ongoing process of self-discovery, growth, and this willingness to embrace the inherent tensions that make us human.
Beautifully said. It's like that dance we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
It's about finding our own unique rhythm, our own way of moving between these two poles and ultimately embracing the full spectrum of what it means to be human.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive. But the exploration doesn't end here. I encourage all of you to continue reflecting on these ideas and to see how they show up in your own lives. Embrace the tension, explore those opposing forces within you, and never stop striving to become a more complete and integrated version of yourself.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. And until next time, keep exploring those hidden depths within yourselves and the world around you.